All right, I will go ahead and get us started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jo Lang. I'm going to be your host for today's member comment period. Welcome to our January OPALCO board meeting. Welcome to the new year. It's great to have you all here this morning. As a reminder, these meetings are recorded and we do post them to our website. Members are invited to make a member comment at the beginning of the session today. You'll have up to 5 minutes to make a comment. We'd like to remind you to please keep yourself muted throughout the meeting unless you are speaking. And to ask a question or to make a comment, please post that in the chat or use the raise hand button as well. And then we'll put you in the queue and unmute you when your turn comes up. I see we already have someone who's looking to make a comment. I'm going to see if there's any other comments that roll in. I'm going to give us a few quick updates first, and then we'll go ahead and do our member comment period. First update is that we are beginning work on our pole relocation project around the Jackson Beach and Island Rec gravel pit parcel today. That project is starting today. This is a project in partnership with San Juan County, and it is part of their Jackson Beach Salmon Recovery Project. It's a really cool project, and we're really happy to be working in collaboration with the county on this project. If anyone is curious, I can add some links into the chat that will give you a little bit more information on the project. So let me know if you'd like to see that. We do also have an exciting in-person series of events coming up next week. These are going to be our Tidal Generation Town Hall events. We're going to be visiting Orcas Island, Lopez Island, and San Juan Island to do these in-person town hall meetings. It's going to be a very informational style meeting. We encourage you to come and ask any questions that you may have about the Tidal Generation project. And so those dates are going to be as follows. The San Juan Island meeting is on Tuesday, January 21st at the Grange from 4 to 5 p.m. The Orcas Island meeting is on Wednesday, January 22nd at the Orcas Fire Hall from 5 to 6 p.m. And then the Lopez meeting did have a schedule change. So if you are planning on attending that Lopez meeting, that new change schedule is Thursday, January 23rd at the Lopez Fire Hall from noon to 1 p.m. Again, we really encourage you to bring any questions you may have. We're going to have staff members and hopefully some board members in attendance as well where we can. And we'd love to answer any of your questions you have about the project. And then the last thing we'd like to add here is that in light of the recent devastating fires in Southern California, we would like to express that our hearts and our minds are with those who have been affected by these fires. And we want to stand in solidarity with the firefighters, first responders, and any volunteers who have been working tirelessly and sacrificing their time and potentially their safety to fight those fires and protect the people in those areas. These fires remind us how important wildfire mitigation practices are, and even in San Juan County. And OPALCO is committed to doing what we can to maintain fire safety along our power lines through our right-of-way program. And community support is really important here as well in identifying high-risk trees, maintaining clearance around power lines and power equipment on personal property, and understanding the why behind these clearing projects is going to really help ensure fire safety and prevention throughout the San Juan Islands. Again, there have been some statements made by the fire marshals and those who work directly. There's a really great post on the Orcasonian that lists some resources, and we're trying to work with the team that posted that to also get our right-of-way posted on there as well, because that is an important technique for wildfire mitigation. And again, we want to express our most heartfelt and sincerest solidarity for those who have been affected by the fires and who are fighting in the fires. All right, we would like to open up for member comments. I noticed that Chris Wolf was first, so we'll go ahead and we can go ahead and get started with Chris whenever you're ready.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So last year we had a big event on Orcas Island on, I think it was Valentine's Day, where there was significant surge event. And we noticed that a number of our systems were affected by that, or the systems that Rain Shadow Solar had installed. And we are starting to notice through our solar monitoring that the December 25th outage on Lopez has also had some similar impacts. And so was curious if Opalco was aware of this situation. And we're just pulling together all of our information. We'll be submitting it to Russell and his team. But just wanted the board and staff to be aware of that if they didn't already, and curious if, in fact, there was some awareness.
I can answer that. You know what, I will, Chris, thanks for bringing it to our attention. I wasn't aware that it was hitting any of the solar installations, so thanks for that. We'll look into it like we do all of our efforts that we did. A little different kind of scenario over there. We have that as a topic of discussion, as a matter of fact, on our board materials today. If you looked at the tree that went into the line there, what is happening is an over voltage that occurs when the transmission line is actually embedded into the distribution line when a tree branch connects the two. So that's that over voltage thing that occurred over the holiday break on part of Lopez. And I think that's really the issue. I think the thing that we need to figure out is how do we get some equipment, and the equipment manufacturers need to provide some wisdom to us about how to get safety protection equipment that's involved, because that's fairly regular when you have an event like that. This is our second one that we've had, and we need to make sure that we can figure out what those overprotection elements are, so we don't keep running into this this frustration that you're having. But we'll let's keep the information flow going, and we'll figure it out together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It does look like the next person we have in the queue is Michael Reardon. Michael, if you're ready to make a comment, you may do so. Sorry, Michael, it looks like you're still muted. If you're having trouble unmuting, we can try to do that.
No, we're just.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. This is Michael Reardon. I was present at the last board meeting in December and found the discussion of rates, prospective rates, interesting. And I noticed it's also on the agenda for this meeting, so I want to make just a couple comments. I remember there was a table of maybe 8 to 10 possibilities that was presented at the last meeting, including 2, I believe, that had included rate charges for those who had more than the standard 200 amp panel, circuit breaker panel, like 400 or 600. And there were additional charges proposed because they're putting a greater demand on the system. And I thought that is indeed a good policy to be following, since you have to build the facilities to be able to respond to that demand, and it's extra charges there. The other thing is on the base rate, I would like to recommend what I've seen the East Sound Water do, and I think Jay Kimball had a hand in this, where they set their basis rate every year depending on the usage of water in the previous year, particularly during the heavy demand months of July through September, rather than just having a standard rate for everybody. And I think that's a reasonable policy that encourages conservation, because one knows that if you get profligate in those months, then you're going to be paying for it the next year every month. And you could implement something like that similarly based on your months of heaviest demand, which I imagine are December through March. Anyway, those 2 recommendations I would love to see implemented in the rates that you're considering.
Hey, Michael, thanks for the input. Really appreciate it. I know that we're going to be looking at rates between now and September. We're trying to get something teed up before we get into the budget cycle and at the end of the year. We're already going to be doing the additional service size analysis, so we already got that one covered. So stay tuned for that one. We'll have regular updates on that as we go. I kind of like where you're going with it. I think we can entertain that. I know that we have the scope of work listed on today's calendar. I think that's what you're referring to. We could add in that thought. I think that's one that is worthy of considering. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for your input.
Yeah, that provision about the base rate certainly makes me conserve, and that's the months when months that I'm trying to water my garden. So I have a backup rooftop rainwater catchment system. So I try to use that as much as I can in those months.
Yep. Thank you.
Kind of load shaving, if you put it in your language.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Michael. And then we do have Heather Nicholson as well, who'd like to make a comment. You can go ahead and do so when you're ready.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. So you mentioned the town halls for the title, and I have attended the last few webinars on it over last couple of years. And so Joe, you mentioned that questions can be asked at the town hall. And I've noticed that in the August webinar, owner members were able to put questions in the chat. No comments in the chat were sort of were asked for, or were asked for no comments in the chat. So I'm wondering, there hasn't been any real engagement, two-way discussion. So I think there needs to be not just, we definitely need to be able to ask questions. That's not something that can be taken off the table, of course. But there needs to be input, comments. There has to be a place for dialogue and comments and two-way discussion. And I'm wondering, well, I'd like to say first that hasn't occurred really yet. And it should in all the town halls, and it should in the workshops that happen. But you know, it's part of the requirements for the process, in the grants and all of the documents that I've read. The environmental assessment for siting, you know, it all lays out that there needs to be consultation with this group, that group, the other type of group. You know, there were absolutely no Orca experts consulted. When I first started learning about this, you know, a few of us asked, we checked around, we checked with all the Orca experts and scientists. Have you heard about it? Have you heard? Zero, none had heard about it. So the tribes hadn't heard about it. Now I know you put out some statements that you have consulted with the tribes. We checked with the Lummi, not one single Lummi in the government had heard about it. So they were excluded. And this is a pattern. And so there needs to be a much more serious sit down with two-way discussion, not just you can stick a question in the chat and maybe we'll get to it, and then no back and forth. This needs to be a real two-way open discussion with enough time that if someone asks a question and you give a response, that then there can be a counterpoint made so that things can be really opened up and looked at. So I guess are you planning? I mean, I should give you the benefit of the doubt. Are you planning on having such a forum or opportunity? Number one.
Yeah, let me respond back. Thanks, Heather. Remember, we had our grant was to investigate the title project that we have. And so part of that investigation is going to be a longer duration, you know, exploration into all the details that you can imagine. So it's a longer process. We've done some advanced work. We wanted to make sure that we do have that public engagement. We have some great information that's on our website. The purpose of the town hall is to initiate that. You know, when we kick off an investigation, we don't have all the information. That's our whole purpose of what we're trying to, you know, what we got the grants for. So as part of that, collecting member input and so forth is what we're going to be doing. That's the purpose of the town hall itself. Having those dialogues and having that two-way communication is essential. I know I was in a meeting, by the way, you referenced some information that I don't know how accurate it is. I was in a meeting that was, you know, about the tribes, and I think we did have a representative. I don't think it was someone from the council in a particular tribe, but I know it was one of the representatives that we would go through as part of our overall process. I would love to make sure that we have those direct communications. If you have any contact information that we could use for the Lummies, for instance, love to reach out to them and have those discussions with them. So, I mean, our ears are open. We don't have all the information yet, but that's what we're really trying to get. And we want to make sure that we have the support of our membership and everyone understands all the components that we have before we would ever make a decision. whether it's environmentally, whether it's moving forward, whether it's financially. I mean, all those things need to be worked through before we move forward. And we are driven to make sure that everybody's heavily engaged. I think this is probably, this is 3 individual meetings that we're going to do, really trying to get more participation for everybody. So patience, and stay tuned. I think you'll be impressed with the information that we're going to be collecting and so forth.
Foster,
Um,
I'm
Foster,
sorry.
yeah.
Can I just jump in here? This is Joel.
Please.
I'd just like to address one specific comment made because it's not accurate that we haven't reached out to the tribes. We have consultants who are working directly with tribes who have interests in this area for their fishing rights and the like. I mean, this is a very large process that we have to comply with FERC regulations on. And we've been set up to follow that. So I just really want to correct that because it's not accurate.
I also want to mention that on that title quick fact, there is a log of all the contacts we've made with the tribes through September of 2024. We've done additional contacts since then, but that's what that log shows.
I'll
So
take a peek at that, but I just want to point out, I expressed to you what I had heard from tribes. So if you have made contact with tribes and if it's on the fact sheet, I will look at that. But I am saying that as of last August, I shared the information with some folks, and one of them is very close with the Lummi, and they had their I can't remember if it was their head of fisheries, and they hadn't heard of it. I mean, none of them had heard of it. I'm just trying. So this is sort of what I'm talking about, is I'm expressing to you what, the fact that the bulk of folks are ignorant of this. Yeah, you've done some outreach a little bit here and there in the last 6 months, but I mean, when I
actually since
mentioned,
2022. So yeah,
This
we
is
just
a
have to correct you on
ongoing
that. Yeah.
process,
And
ongoing
we're
process. 6
and we're
months is a
starting
long
with
time.
the tribal process. So we contact, not everybody in the tribes, not the council. We start with the people that according to the tribal process, and they get to choose who they share that information with. So we are following that, and perhaps the people haven't heard of it, but that's on the people we've made contact with. So yeah.
so, and you say that there's a list on the fact sheet, on the info sheet,
Yeah, it's linked in the chat.
and it's
Yeah,
a
I
list
just
of,
put it in
is it a list of the name of the tribe or the name of the contact person?
with dates and the nature of the contact.
And is it just the name of the tribe, or of the entity, or the individual?
Yeah, we're not listing individuals.
Okay, I just want to say something in response to what Foster had responded to me. So I thought you kind of made it sound like this is a two-way dialogue in the town halls, and I hope it will be. I think that was part of my question, is I heard Joe say that people could come and ask questions, and I do think we need to do that, but we also need back and forth. So will it be a two-way dialogue in the town halls where there can be that kind of back and forth?
I already answered that one, Heather. Yeah, absolutely. And if you have
Oh,
any
okay.
other,
Uh-huh.
if you have any other contact information, I look forward to hearing those. Let me know who they are. I know that I'm always thirsting to get additional contacts and have those communications. What Krista said is right. We have to follow, a process and a situation when it comes to the tribes. There's protocol that goes along with that, and that's the protocol that we follow that Joel mentioned. Circumventing that is not welcome, is what I've
Okay.
seen. If there's ever any information that or contacts that you have, I would love to reach out to people and have those dialogues.
Well, I'm sure they're easy to get to,
Wendy has a comment, so
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a comment.
I know I'm not done responding to what Foster had raised. So that's kind of what I'm interested in here, is when it comes to consulting with the relevant people, as I said, none of the Orca experts had been consulted. And
So Heather, you have had your
wait,
5
one
minutes,
second,
so-
one second, please. Toby Cooper had shared, he had made an inquiry to Opalco a few months ago, and Foster, you provided a response to him, and in that, I think he had asked about grants and what had been received or applied for. And you had mentioned that we've committed to over 800,000 already in grant matching. So, what, I don't know whether how much of that has gone out or not, or is for the future, but the point is, you provided a response that commitment had been made. And so to me, to have already gone in that deep and not have even once consulted an Orca expert that I am aware of. Okay, so I'm not saying you didn't.
All right, thank you, Heather. We appreciate you. Wendy, go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, I did want to say something supporting what Heather is saying, which is I went to the movie Fish Wars here on Orcas, and there were a number of tribal members who were attending that meeting and presenting the movie, including some officials, and Heather would know who they are from their fisheries, like I think the head of their whole native fisheries for a whole group of the tribes. And I asked a question about the tidal turbine, and they had not heard of it at all. And I went up afterwards because I was kind of surprised that they hadn't heard anything about it, and they hadn't. So I do want to just support that we need to work on our communication with the tribes.
So I'd like to address that. We have, for all of Opalco projects, we have tribal consultations, whether it's cultural resources or environmental or fisheries, the fisheries groups. We have specific government to government leads when it comes to FERC regulations. We have specific company to government leads. We have to work through them. They have to push that information amongst their tribe. If we supersede that, we shut down communications with this tribe. So we have our people. That is all we are going to do. That's all we're allowed to do. And to go beyond that would be inappropriate as a company and from a government to government standpoint. So we have to work the way we're working. There's no option to go directly to the Fisheries Committee. That's not our opportunity, and it would be very inappropriate. So let's make that very clear.
There really are. I mean, they're a sovereign nation, and what they've done is they've set up protocols that we're following to make sure that we don't circumvent that process as requested by them. So it's a lot more than, these people haven't heard about it. We do have to follow those regimented processes.
I guess it just doesn't make sense to me that I hear what you're saying, Russell, and maybe we can chat on the phone and I can get a better understanding of that. But for them to just not be informed, something doesn't add up there. There's got to be a way for everybody to be informed about it. So anyway, thanks for the time. Appreciate your having some dialogue about this, and hope to see, well, I guess we'll see how it goes. Hopefully the town halls will be a good in-depth discussion. Thank you.
So let's, and one step further on this, we are doing what we would call an early consultation. Right now, we have no legal means that we have to consult on this project until we file our draft license application. That happens in April. That's when the public commentary, the fisheries, all these people get involved. Until then, we are doing a courtesy engagement with the tribes. And we've been doing that for, like Krista said, since 2022. So we are trying to engage the right individuals. And within these tribes, they tell us in these meetings, they will only push this up the flag when it gets to a state they need to. And that's it. So the right people are reviewing, and they're not wasting the individual times within the tribe that they don't need to. So they're waiting till the flags are high enough. Right now, we're in an early process. We are in a feasibility study. We will dive very deep into all the biological and tribal engagements as we need to at the appropriate times. This is a very regimented process. And I'm just stating that to this whole group because it seems to be a massive point of confusion.
Well, how about the Orca?
No, Heather, we're done and we need to get to the next comment. Thank you.
All right, if we have any other comments, go ahead and raise your hand or put in the chat, and we will circle back to those at the end of the meeting. For now, I'm going to wrap up our member comment period. Thank you all for joining us and for your questions and comments. And again, we will open that back up at the end of the meeting if there are any follow-up questions. And then we are going to go ahead and get started.
Joe, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. We'll start our regular board meeting, January 16th, 2025. First item on our agenda this morning is the consent agenda. Believe you've all had a chance to look through all that, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that is passed. All right, second item. Foster, you're up.
Yeah, we have two new council people that we're all excited about. We're just elected. And what we've been doing is kind of reaching out and getting to know our two new people that we have. We're also going to reach out to Jane, who makes up the third, and continue our dialogue. We have a lot of really essential things that we're covering with the San Juan County, and we need their help when it comes to getting out more, power reliability requires us to work together with, our community, certainly the council. So we've really been starting from scratch with the process. And I think that it's been a really good discussion period that we've had with Justin. I think Justin really understands it. So does Carrie. Carrie's been wonderful during the election process. She was available to us and we could talk shop on electricity and some of the challenges that we're faced with. And I wanted to make sure that I kind of listed some of the information that we've been talking to the individual council members about. So I put together 1 through 13 here in a sequence that we've been following just to let everybody understand kind of where we are. I feel like, we've gone through the Baylor Hill process. We're going through the permitting as everyone is aware. And I'm not 100% sure people really realize how precarious our power grid is at this stage. And I feel like we were getting a little bit of pushback from the county. I think we were getting pushback from some of the other people that want to protect ag land. And I don't think that they're necessarily in sync with what we're trying to accomplish with power reliability. And having these communications with our membership is going to be one of the things that we're really going to be pushing forward in 2025. And I don't need to go through these things. You guys have seen this on many presentations, but I wanted to make sure that I kind of clearly laid it out. In addition to that, there's a separate presentation set of materials, a PowerPoint presentation that I also attached to the meeting materials in January. And that's more of a graphical representation of the information that you're seeing on the screen. If anyone has any questions about it, these are what we're going to be talking about as we progress through 2025. Our next meeting is with Jane after this meeting, as a matter of fact. That's where we're going to be meeting with her and have these discussions. And then broaden out a little bit, we're going to, our next one is we'll try to schedule something with the new county manager, which is Jessica Hudson at the county, and have these same kind of discussions with them. We have a docket request that's on the agenda or it's going to be one of our agenda items with the county of really trying to understand how our power needs are changing over time. I look at it as, I think back in the day, and I'm going to get off on a little bit of a tangent if I can, Vince.
Yeah, sure.
I look at like 1951. That's when we got our power cable from Bonneville Power Administration. New cable coming from the mainland. Really exciting, right? We had limitations on what kind of generations of generating capabilities that we had in the county. We had the one on Orcas, which was, the one to point to. It's a big, giant diesel generator, really loud and noisy. And I am getting hold of that cable and not having to provide that kind of generation locally was great. The community had to come together, though. Think about the times. The time that at that time we really didn't have any ability to distribute that that cable anywhere, right? That all that power was not available to be brought to the other islands. It didn't exist on Orcas, for instance. It was really only on Lopez. And the community came together. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the pictures. They're great pictures. There was a cable laying court, and there was a whole big giant festival. There was a grand opening when the cable was delivered. There was a christening with a bottle of champagne and so forth. The community really came together, really excited about power being delivered on our island. And I think we all came together because we knew how essential it was and what a great benefit that was to us. And I think over the time, I think, we treat it now as it's an essential facility. We need to have it to manage our overall day-to-day lives, but I think we've lost the essential part in our community. And I think we need to have that dialogue back with our members so we all are on the same page what essential facilities look like. If I think everybody back in 1951 really dropped everything and make sure that we had the ability to route those cables around. We had now we got 25 submarine cables connecting our islands together. Think about what a initiative that was back in the day. That took a lot of understanding by the membership. There was if I go back and I looked at the financials back in the 60s, it was kind of like the early 60s before we got really routing that power around, and we were effectively bankrupt. And the community came together because we're a co-op, and we wanted to make sure that this essential opportunity was, really coordinated throughout our community. We did a really good job. The reason I bring that up is because I think we need to do a reversion of that, a renaissance back to those days where we really look into the mirror and say, we know that power reliability on the mainland is going to be precarious. We need to do something locally if we're going to be serious about power 24/7. And we need to look at it like we did kind of the old days is my comparison to what we have forward. And I think there's a lot to be said about us really putting that out there when you're a member and the power goes out like it did over Christmas and part of Lopez. Boy, was that a frustrating time. And I think that when people put it in that perspective, either you either have power or you don't, and that's going to be the situation we're in. I think that we're going to change our mindsets a lot, and we're going to start embracing some of the renewable projects that we have. But we want to take a little bit of a pause, if you will, and really have a good engagement with our members that you've read two of there's a 3-part series we're writing right now, really trying to inform and educate our membership. And once we're done with that, really having maybe a survey that culminates in asking some really good questions about, how we feel about what we're going forward with. There's a handful of folks that are going to be resistive to certain renewable projects, and Wendy has been really good. If anything that we delay translates to, we're going to be using the equivalent of millions of tons of carbon. And if every delay that we go forward with, we're going to the monster that was created is going to keep being fed until we come up with better alternative energy options going forward. And so anyway, I think we're starting that engagement. Here's the outline for it. As you go forward with candidate forums and discussion with the members, I hope all these talking points really get out so we can have that dialogue with our members. Thanks for letting me kind of go on and on, Vince.
Sure, no problem. Okay. Anything else you wanted to cover on this?
I think that, and just know that there's a presentation deck that's behind it. I won't go into the details. I think you've heard my story pretty well, but it basically just supports the information that's highlighted here.
Okay.
Any questions by anybody?
Yeah, Jerry.
Foster, I got one question for you, and I think it would be a useful item to append to all of these discussions. If we don't follow through and provide the ability to be carbon free by 2045, what's the downside of that cost-wise to IPALCO? And there's a system of penalties that was proposed as part of the original CETA language. I think that needs to be brought out here, and know that there really is a financial downside to us not meeting these goals of having sufficient carbon-free power available on the schedules that are built into this legislation.
Yeah, I like what you're saying with that. What's going through my head is I probably need to sit down with PNGC and estimate load growth, what the penalties are. Right now, we're just starting to get into that tier 2 power threshold, and that's going to be the more costly of the energy that we have for load growth, and that's I think where most of the penalties are going to occur. Right now, we're in the Bonneville power, tier 1 threshold area, but going forward, we're going to get more into that. Yeah, why don't I'll ask him that. It may take a little bit of time to put that together, but I like where you're going with it. There's a dollar effort, and there's, the one that I've been really focusing on, Jerry, is there's a reliability effort. And the dollar increase is one thing, and let's not lose sight of that, because that's load growth power is projected to double within short order and then actually triple within a short period of time. So what you're saying is very real. Let me see if I can put some numbers around it with PNGC's help.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a third phase. I mean, yes, we get into tier 2, and our rates have gone up by a certain percentage, but this is after we've exhausted all the availability of tier 2, basically, which with these kind of load growth is a real possibility, I think. And where do those penalties fit in relative to the increased costs of tier 2?
Yeah, but let me we haven't been able to really we haven't really understood the penalties yet. We're starting to get clarity from Washington State and Department of Commerce. Maybe it's time for us to resurrect that. We're also looking at some further studies that we could probably reach out to E3 when we go through our rate study. So we're going to have a separate little side scope I could put on their list as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a good point, and get it verified by an independent body like E3.
All right, good thoughts, Chair. Yeah,
Okay.
really.
Okay. Foster, next, rate discussion.
Rate discussion. Why don't we roll that down a little bit? So we're just kicking off the rates discussion. There's a good scope back and forth with E3. We made the selection to go with E3. You can kind of see where energy plus environmental plus economics, that's where they get their name from, that we know from. Really good operation, have a lot of data capabilities to really dive into kind of regional information, which is neat. They have some really good sophisticated modeling software that we're going to be taking advantage of. The preliminary scope that we came up with is really the cost of service analysis, and that's where you look at all the cost parameters within our utility, like what are the cost burdens by topic that we have. So that's the COSA. That's very different than the rate proposals. We just want to make sure we do that. So we're going to update our cost causation, if you will, profile. That's known as the COSA. And then once we get that done, then we can start figuring out how to consider rate options moving forward with the ones that are on the list. And I know Michael Reardon also came up with another little concept that I could throw into the mix here. But these are the ones that we've already scoped out with E3. And I think these are the ones that were always on the topic from the last time about doing some research on demand, time of use, time of generation. I call this one breakout of income statement components. It's a version of what Michael Reardon just brought up, but a little different. It's basically saying the context of it is, we know we're always going to sell 200 million kilowatts. It's between 200 million and 240 is what the question is. So assigning our base charges to the 200 is what that one represents, kind of a version of where Michael Reardon was. A large service analysis, that's going to be part of it. We're going to be a tiered breakout for power cost based on your thresholds. And then we have some assured sales collection option with us, an additional fixed cost adjuster that we're considering too. We're going to put all these things like in a table. It's going to go out, and we'll do the pros and cons. We'll look at it based on customer impacts to make sure there's no rate shock. That's that third bullet there. These are the typical residential users that we have to estimate what that rate shock potential is. And if there's something large on the list, then we need to be aware of that. The rate collection is really agnostic we want to make sure we collect the same amount of revenue is what I mean by that. How we collect it is is going to be the same number, but could dramatically impact different users in different ways. And that's what we got to be careful with. And of course, we'll phase it over time about how to move forward. Again, this is going to be a longer process. We'll keep you guys in tune with what we have going on, but good start. I think it was a great selection to go forward with E3. I feel like we're in really good hands, and we're not going to be business as usual like we've seen some of the other COSA and rate consultants that are out there that aren't nearly going to explore what we're going to be diving into.
Yeah, Foster, I completely support the use of E3 on this thing. And I think it's primarily because I think because they've done so much of this for other governmental entities and utilities and states, in the Pacific Northwest. I think they're well versed on, kind of looking into the crystal ball a little bit and seeing ahead. For example, BPA's new rate case takes effect, I believe, October 1st of this year. And there's like a 10% increase or so coming out of them. Is it been made clear at all as they starting to work on this the 2028 contract and stuff like that, what changes may occur in the billing determinants going forward, or is that still too fuzzy to think about?
Well, it's too fuzzy for us to understand exactly what they are. I have an email into our AE, our representative, really trying to figure out exactly what those billing determinants mean. Here's what I think you mean, Vince, and I think it's good discussion for everybody to understand. The way I look at our distribution for Opalco is we have our load, and our load it goes up in the January time is really high because of the heating load, and it drops down to the summertime when solar is more prevalent and available, and then it goes back up in the other direction. So it's a trough, if you will, about our energy curve. And what I want to know is, okay, when do I break into tier 2? Like, as load growth hits, so what portion along those curves that I just painted in your mind, where does tier 1 hit? Do I have extra tier 1 that I could use in basically allow another PNGC, our power co-op, allow them to use it for a fee? Where am I going to run to break into these bigger thresholds, daytime, nighttime, so I really understand my load? And then with that information, I need to know that from those billing determinants that Bonneville has, so I can make adjustments along our curve and encourage our people, our membership, to save power at certain times, maybe give some additional benefit if we do save the power resources during those time intervals. But I got to get that information out of Bonneville. So it's really been frustrating to me because the billing determinants are heavy load hours and different, alphabet soup, as opposed to practical aspects like I just tried to paint in your mind. Does that make sense, Vince?
Yeah, and this ties into what Jerry was saying about the upcoming, what are the costs going to be based on the stuff that CETA's put out. And I'll give you an example on this. This is 2025, December 31st, 2025, the coal plant in Centralia shuts down. And as far as I've been able to determine, that's been inside Bonneville Power Administration's balancing authority. So 1,000 megawatts is going to disappear on the stroke of midnight there. That's got to have an impact on costs and stuff going on. And if you look at their total available energy that they've got, that's going to be, a piece of it's going to be missing. As of 2032, 2033, I'm not sure exactly, maybe even 2035, I'm not sure. Natural gas. So as we go into tier 2, BPA is going to give us the option to, they'll purchase it on the market, or we can go purchase it on the market ourselves through PNGC or whatever mechanisms we adopt on that. From 2035 on, anybody that's buying natural gas electric power is going to pay basically a 100% penalty. So, for example, if natural gas is selling for $70 a megawatt hour, in a non-peaked situation, the state's going to tack on about a $80 to $100 per megawatt hour onto that. So whatever tier 2 portions are going to be coming out of there, and the state subscribes that to undesignated sources or whatever. So it just gets rolled into that bundle. So those types of things are going to have impacts as we going forward. And that's why I think E3's got a great handle on what's coming down the pike and how to give us some advice about how we need to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I take a deep breath on that one, Vince, because we have a gun to our head, right? If we have if we have a weather event that's really cold during the winter time, the power is just in demand. What happens? Because people are not incentivized to, build those natural gas generating facilities any longer. If anything, they've phased them out. So that's where it gets a little precarious for us, and the reliability starts to suffer dramatically right away. So yeah, we're going to get hit by price spikes as well as shortages. So
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that in January of last year, I think it was, and it was interesting this year. I think it was the first 7 or 8 days of December, 2,500 megawatts of wind went to zero. So you can imagine, what if that was the first 10 days of January in 2026? So you got no wind at all, and now you're missing another 1,000 megawatts worth of coal power that's out of there. And we just simply ask the question, so where's the power coming from? Like I say, I think it's going to be interesting times.
well, you're not kidding. Well, stay tuned. I know we're in good hands with E3. I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to do a side scope with them that lays out some other information that, since we have their capabilities, that maybe we want to put together some resources so we can explain our situation better to our membership, which is going to be essential.
Good. Okay.
Thank you, Vince. That was exactly what I was referring to, and I just think it needs to be part of, what we describe to our customers is out there. We can quantify it, to a certain degree, not totally, but at least it needs to be another component of our costs, and costs that will be passed on to our members.
I mean, you can see that you can pull up Puget Sound Energy's IRP and their CEIP that they submitted to the state. They're looking over the next 5-6 years, doubling the cost of power. Basically, they're going from 30, 31, 32 to 60 something dollars a megawatt hour there, and they're having to plan for that accordingly. And they're in worst case because they're getting 43% of their power out of Wyoming, and that they've got to replace half of their power load by the end of this year.
Not to get it sidetracked, have you seen the prices that are estimated now in California?
Yeah.
I mean, so now all of, if they don't take care of their lines, and by the way, I watched one of the clips that there was suspect right away trimming, and I was watching this one power line in the tree area just spark. And I was like, wow, we got to make sure that our right away trimming is really following our standards. Otherwise, boy, you're getting into a situation where I think PSE could be in a lot of legal trouble now. Anyway, any other questions on the E3 side?
Move on.
Christmas outage. I just wanted to make sure this was such a unique outage that we had. Why don't we pull up to the tree? That's so telling, right? So this tree it was across the street. These are ones that are really dangerous. They're located across the street. The trees are so tall. Remember when we were first putting our infrastructure in place, most or a very large percentage of our service territory in the San Juan Islands was not a lot of trees around because they were making concrete ash to build Seattle. So these trees now are 80 years old and 80 feet tall is the way I kind of look at it. And these trees, that when they get ahead of steam and they're across the street and they fall into the power lines, look out. Now this one, notice that the transmission is above and the distribution is below. So it really knocked it. It really decimated the whole pole string. Really, the lower portion is dramatic. So when I painted this picture, I think Chris is still out there, painted the picture that if you take the transmission voltage, which is really high, and as this tree is going through it, it starts to, the transmission starts to be brought over into the distribution segments, and then that distribution is what's leading outward. So that's the big giant dilemma that this kind of a tree incident creates. Pretty dramatic. And I think about all the cross arms and insulators and everything else that we had to replace along the way. So pretty good. I think our crew did a fantastic job. If you think about the amount of time that we got that back on, it was pretty exciting.
And Foster, the tree being across the street meant that it wasn't in our right of way and available to trim previously, right?
Well, it's certainly, yeah, it's in that category that something that's outside the area. Now, I don't know exactly what the right of way would be, whether it incorporated that area, but we would have to categorize that as a danger tree.
I see.
And those get harder and harder to categorize going forward. Now, I don't know exactly how the event went. I'm kind of making the assumption that it was that there was something going on between the transmission and the distribution. I'd have to go back in and have, or Russell would have to go back in and look at the logs with our
Yeah.
system engineer to see if that happened. So we don't really know all the details, Chris, about how that would work, but looking at it, I kind of wonder if that's the cause of that, but I'm not 100% sure until we dive in deep. So we'll make sure we do that.
Just to clear up the tree side of things, we don't have rights on that side of the road except for 4 danger trees, and that's covered in RCWs.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, basically.
So as our we have an arborist that reviews all of our projects and all of our right-of-way trimming year over year.
Mhm.
And this area was reviewed, and that tree was not picked out. And you know, informally, and I'll say not by an arborist, that look at the trunk and where it snapped. Our crews said it looked like a very healthy tree, but you know, that was an extreme event, and you can't plan for the extreme always.
Right.
We
Yeah,
haven't,
danger tree, yeah.
you know, and I appreciate if Chris is still, yeah, Chris is still out there. So Chris, please make sure to send us any information you have, timestamps, things like that. We'll make sure to review again. We had no evidence of an overvoltage event on the Opalco system or a bridging of the transmission and distribution lines, similar to the February 14th event of 2024. But we'll review again and see if there was any power quality issues that we might see on our side. But anyway, our relay said it was a standard overvoltage or over current event, which is common for these. And if you remember at time of, there was a blink on the transmission line. That's where the top of the tree touched the transmission line there. And then it fell through and cleared. So we went out for 15 seconds. If you're here in Orcas and on Shaw, you would have seen it. We were out for about 15 seconds. And then it was re-energized, the transmission line. And we didn't see any event until we shut off power. So one of the insulators in the top of the pole you're seeing in this picture was slightly damaged, but not enough to for a sustained outage. For the crew's sake, because they did work into the late morning that next day. For the crew's sake, we decided to shut off power for roughly, I think it was, you'll see it in the event log, the informal or the less detailed event log above. That it was roughly, I think it was a 22-minute outage for Orcas and San Juan, so they could repair the one insulator and then get back to work on the distribution side of things, which was what really broke away and created a longer sustained outage for the Lopez group. So Chris, anyway, I look forward to seeing that information, and we'll go refresh and grab the event logs of our telemetry. Thank you.
That sounds great, Russell. Thank you.
Foster, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks for that, Krista.
Okay.
I know that when we you know, I had a heat pump that went out during that earlier event for that spike, and I know that the manufacturers came up with a device for our ductless heat pumps that would be you know, basically a fail safe. It would basically take the brunt of any of those voltage fluctuations. I don't know exactly how it's going to be for your solar array, but I know that we're going to have to figure out some device, or your manufacturers are going to need to recommend something that works. I know you guys got a lot more loads going on with that, and it's very different than ductless heat pumps. So I feel for you.
Buster, next.
General manager report. So these are our dashboards. Stay tuned. There's a lot. You know what's interesting is every once in a while I go to Russell and I say, "Hey, do you have information on X, Y, and Z?" And he always points it out to me now. that, that's a dashboard, right? Right.
Mhm.
I always kind of giggle at myself. He's got some really good information that's available. So just know it's there if you ever want to dive into some of that real-time data. It's nice that we have that stuff readily available. Our library of quick facts is becoming really important for us. What members are asking really good questions. And what, like Heather asked a handful of questions, and we want to make sure that we provide good information to our members. And sometimes it's a lot easier to ask, a question and then another question and then another question before we have a chance to respond and be very clear on what our responses are. So we're really answering the questions, but some people ask more questions than we can keep up with. And then really the goal with our quick facts is to do just that. And so we can have that dialogue with people, and rather getting caught up in rabbit holes, that we can defer them and link them to a quick fact that lays out the information in better detail. So it's really been helpful for us in trying to respond to so many questions that are really good questions. And we can send the links in social media and so forth. So if you have any quick fact recommendations that people ask you, let us know, and we'll create a detailed, itemized response to that in the form of a quick fact. Keep going down. Our WIP, so this is our construction work efforts that we have, very consistent with what we're doing. We're in good shape there. The meter update, we were thinking we were going to go forward with a meter update with our AMI meters starting in 2025. I think that's really important for us. I would say this, some of the capabilities of the over power line carrier are starting to look pretty darn good. I like a lot of the features they have. I think the only power line carrier con that I'm seeing right now is the interval that you can read. So you can't read those intervals as quickly as we would like, but they're getting pretty good on the technical capabilities, and the amount of data and the variation of data that we're looking at are becoming good. And we like that because we really haven't seen an outside AMI that really jumps off the list, that really is in the category that we want to move forward with. So right now we're not going to be jumping into a huge rollout with any AMI meters until we find something that really works for us. And again, the over power line carrier getting more capabilities as we go. So kind of stay tuned, but we're not going to rush right into the AMI meters, at least in the next couple quarters. Safety, everything's going well again. Grants, you can see the listing of the grants that we have, the ones that we're seeking, the ones who have been awarded. I was really excited about grants this time last year. It was, the administration was really pushing high on the Affordable Care Act and so forth. I don't see that level of enthusiasm with this next administration. So we're going to have to start thinking a little bit differently on how to really do some of the wonderful projects that we're trying to do. But if the grant funding is dried up, we got to look for other alternatives. I know one that we've been thinking about, is looking to partnerships with the membership and so forth. So we're going to have to consider other alternatives. So we're not going to give up on the grants, but we do have to put it in perspective. Going down. Wildfire prevention, it's on the tip of everybody's mind. I don't know if you guys know, but I came out of Southern California, and the place I moved from was right where right where the wildfires are occurring as we speak. In fact, the house that I'm no longer in down there is like only 2 streets, I think, away from destruction, where most of the house is burnt down. So I really feel for everything that's really going on down in California. I just, you want to cry because all the people that are there, and how much they're struggling from everything. And I also know when we bring those topics home, how important it is for us to pay attention to wildfire. I know that I think we get in a different situation here. I think for 8 to 9 months, it's fairly wet. I think that we dodge the bullet. We don't have that kind of global warming occurring here in the month of January that they do, which is crazy. But we do have 3 to 4 months in the summertime that get extremely dry, and we got to take our our efforts here in right-of-way trimming and maintenance and everything that we do that follows the FERC standards to make sure that we continue to keep it up, because it gets dry as dry can be. And we can't lose sight of that. So as much as some people are gonna have a little bit of pushback when it comes to the rights of way trimming and so forth, we gotta keep doing it. We gotta make sure that we follow our best practices that we have through the FERC protocols. We're going to continue to do that. The options and the alternatives are just not available. We have to do what we do. I think we're doing a really good job of it. We're very protective. We have one chart, if you haven't seen the right-of-way trimming quick fact, it's very informative. The area, what we did is we calculated the area that we have facilities on as Opalco, that we maintain our right-of-ways. And then we, there's 109,000 acres in San Juan County, and we're less than 1% of that where our structures are. Just put that in perspective. If we keep those trimmed up, then we're going to be looking good for fire mitigation. If not, the environmental catastrophe that we've seen down in California could be realized here too, and that's not good for the environment in any way, shape, or form. So prevention is really the call to order that we're going to be following. There, by the way, on that same one, there was an article written by, it's in the appendix. There's an article written by the, I think by Brendan Cowan and Fire Life Safety. Why don't you go to that real quick, the appendix, if you can. I think you're running my screen, Krista. Thank you. So go down to the next one. So the county, what they did is they wrote this article. It's in the typical news sources, and they came up with 4 things that people should do to mitigate the fire risk. And what we did is we sent a letter into Brendan and company, and then we added a 5th. We recommended that they also include our recommended language above. So why don't we go up to what we submitted, and I'll know that this is there. Why don't you roll up a little bit? So right there, it says number 5. So they came up with 1 through 4. Here's 5. And it's just basically just acknowledging the fact that we need to, everybody needs to support our rights of way and trimming maintenance efforts that we have. And that's our little paragraph that we write into that. So hopefully we can have the fire departments and the emergency responders also support our efforts as well. It's really important. I think we got an article coming up about wildfires next, probably next week, as a matter of fact, or tomorrow. Want me to keep going, Vince?
Affirmative.
Okay, budget tracking. We're starting the year. It's already January. Wow, happy New Year. We're starting the year perfect. I mean, basically, we've expected a little bit of an El Nino at the beginning of the year. We're numbers are financial numbers that we have are really strong. The heating degree days are a little bit lower, but we're still doing pretty well on operating revenue, which is great. Why is that? I have this discussion, and I think about you, Mark, all the time. It's like, how much is this of people are, staying in their second homes, or are we converting to more people living here permanently? And I think the answer is yes. I think what we've done with Rock Island and provided internet services that are allowing people to work from home, I think we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the load numbers in our usage profiles, and that's pretty exciting for us. I know that when we first started kicking off Rock Island, we were pretty much limited to, second homeowners, retirees, and vacationers. And I think now we're starting to see a good cross-section of typical workers that can work remotely, which is fantastic. And it shows up in our numbers, really helps us out. Keep going down. ECA, we're returning members. We're not trying to overcollect or undercollect on our electric revenue. We're doing a good job. At this stage, we've returned, got almost 100,000 back to our members just for the year in December. Let's keep going. So that adjuster works. Following our heating degree days, it's again kind of shows that we were below the average, so we were a little bit warmer than not. Usually that means that we don't collect as much revenue, so we're starting to see that revenue. We should be able to put some good estimates together now that lead to some of the load growth they're experiencing from people that are here more full-time than not, trying to figure out how to get some support for those figures. Weather forecast, still see a lot of blue. That's indicating La Nina sense. I haven't seen it yet. I mean, when you go outside, we just had a really great weekend, nice and warm and pretty comfortable for this time of the year. But I've heard from the news sources that La Nina is now officially here. Well, we're about to have an Arctic blast, is my understanding. So get your coat ready. Energy assistance funding. We do a really good job with our low income members and make sure that we're going to keep that going. I don't know of a co-op out there that does a better job with our low income programs than us. It's pretty exciting to see. A lot of co-ops do the Project PAL equivalent, where people donate $8 for a heating season to come up with energy assistance that really helps on a monthly basis. Has been a big win for us. And I love the fact that we have that program. See the figures that go along with that. LIHEAP, we're also part of them, as well as the state energy. They have a new one called SHEAP that's also helping low-income members for their energy bills. This can be really important for us. If we know that the price of energy is going to go up, this is going to be a really noteworthy program that we're going to keep monitoring and probably have to increase over time. Energy savings. You know, we talk a lot about power and load growth and whatever. Let's not lose sight of fact. There was one article that I was reading about, making sure that we conserve and we use less. And we do a good job. Our Switch It Up program is fantastic. Our energy savings rebates that our members benefit from are tremendous. You put these two programs together, we do a lot for conservation and energy efficiency. And we're one of the few co-ops out there that I know that are able to say, hey, this is going to be a big issue with power costs. And then we have a solution called Switch It Up, where you can, we provide the hardest component to come by is the capital funding to make your house more efficient. And the Switch It Up program really allows for us to put those measures in our home and benefit from it to keep energy conservation and efficiency really top notch. We still got some really good dollars left in the program once we expanded it. Really proud. I can't believe it to date that we've spent $20 million on our programs to date, which is pretty darn neat. These are solely dedicated to members that want to put energy savings devices and conservation measures in their homes. Pretty neat. Solar programs, interconnect. We've opened that up to the solar people as well. So we've actually incentivized our rooftop solar. I know, Chris, I'm sure that majority of your hookups that you see probably use our Switch It Up programs for their solar installation. That's pretty darn exciting. We got 833 now solar people connected in our system, and you can see our layout of our community solar. Our Baylor Hill, we're still navigating through kind of what we're going to do with that. I know that we were really pushing because we had a grant for low income solar, and the grant was, if we embrace solar, anything that we put in place that adds up to the $1 million could go right back into our low income solar programs. We submitted some information to the Department of Commerce with Washington State. They've been really trying to help us. And some of our representatives trying to keep that solar grant, but we have to reposition it in a new location. The permitting challenges that we're looking at with Baylor Hill are cumbersome, meaning in terms of time that we're probably going to miss that grant window. So we have to come up with alternatives. I don't think that there's anything on the Baylor Hill project in total that we can't overcome, but it's just a timing thing that we're going to need to come up with some alternatives for the low income solar portion of our project. Let's see here. What else we got? Communications. Any questions on solar stuff? I thought I heard Jerry chime in there for a second. Communications, we just got a great kind of schedule from Joe. Thanks for the detail that went along with it. But here are the dates that are the town halls for the title. Excited about having those two-way dialogue. scenarios. This is going to be one of our first in-persons, right? We've been doing the Zoom meetings that have been extremely effective in getting a lot of people engaged, but we figured let's go and meet one-to-one, one-on-one, and spread ourselves out into the community a lot more. So we're going to get you can see the dates on the 21st of January through the 23rd. We're going to be on San Juan, Orcas, and Lopez accordingly. Pretty fun. Our energy workshop, I really want to get a survey out to the members, but before I do, I really want to have some good dialogue and workshop and town hall kind of discussions with our members about that list of 1 through 13 that I just went through that we're faced with, that we're trying to combat. And then I think once we get all on the same page to have a survey, to conduct a survey and really get a good gauge of where our members are excited about and what they support. And I think we'll have better information for the board to make great decisions going forward. Candidate forum, stay tuned. We got Mark, Brian, and Jerry. Candidate forum dates are going to be, it's March 5th at 5, so stay tuned for that one. Annual meeting is the 24th of April with our member festival on the 25th. Pretty exciting. Here's our election timeline. People are always curious about when things happen and what the milestone dates are. Here's where they are. Thanks for volunteering and putting your names in the hat again. I really appreciate it. I know Opelka benefits tremendously from your collective wisdom. So thanks for that. And all is going well on Rock Island. Here's the kind of snapshot numbers for the revenues in 2024. Remember, we got that big push going on for our grant. We're doing really well. If anything, we're ahead of schedule. So that's pretty exciting stuff. And then the appendix, I just already pointed to it, but I'll go down there again. It was the wildfire stuff that we recommended that was included in the standard information that this broadcast by Brendan and the Emergency Management Group at the county.
Good.
And boy, I felt like I talked a lot through that one.
Very good. Let's see. Let me just tap here a little bit, both Foster and Jerry. Any news out of PNGC and WRECA, if anything?
Do you want to do the WRECA, Jerry?
Nothing really of note, other than the fact that they posted I think, a pretty well-balanced informational YouTube video with regard to the balance of power output from the Columbia River versus mitigation of salmon issues. And I think it was well balanced. There's a lot of interesting information. I don't know whether you've seen it, Foster, but I think it'd be something good that we can post amongst our resources. It's timely. I mean, it's pretty much up-to-date information at the moment. Have you had a chance to see it?
No, I haven't yet. I'll find that and see if I can circulate it around.
Chelsea had it yesterday on one of her emails, so you probably got it there.
Great. I know that the follow-up with WRECA, we have a really good person down there that's helped coordinate some of our lobbying efforts. Name's Nick. He's great. He's got a good handle on all the important topics. I mean, the big thing.
Nick Stroley, that is.
Yeah, and he's tracking all the things. I mean, the cumbersome part about Olympia is trying to figure out, well, what different policies and regulations are being proposed, and there's so many out there, and trying to narrow those things down to something that you could focus on is what he's been doing. And I think he's been a good breath of fresh air for us to really focus on what we need to focus on and not get too, spread too thin along the way.
But I don't think there's anything of any really major import for this coming legislative session.
There was one thing that was really, that was really interesting, and I'm going to say annoying for a reason, but this is the second time I've seen it. It was, they're proposing to do, allow counties to put a separate tax that the utility would collect. And I thought that was like crazy, but it's the second time I've seen it. Hopefully it fails miserably. It's the least transparent topic I've ever heard of, that they're actually trying to have us collect their taxes. Seems a little bizarre to me, but stay tuned.
I don't think they got a lot of strength there.
I'm sorry, Jerry. Go ahead.
It's okay.
I was just going to comment on that. My PUD clients are all over that issue, and they've had some contact with the legislator, and apparently that this is just sort of a perennial try by the counties, and the they believe that it doesn't really have many legs to go. So
I can't imagine putting the administrative burden on the utility and then the less than transparent, your tax goes up. And so then our members think that we're, our rates are going through. It just drives me absolutely bonkers. But anyway, that was the only one that just made my eye twitch.
I got one I want to alert you both to, and this is something to watch for in PNGC and WRECA. I accidentally stumbled across a presentation on the county council meeting this last Tuesday. I guess the county has a lobbyist who kind of works for a number of the counties up here and in Olympia, and he's been here for 27 years or something. So he presented what the current WSAC, that's the Washington State Association of Counties. So this is all the counties that get together, and they worked up a legislative agenda, and it caught my eye, and they got an item on there. And I can't believe this just goes absolutely backwards compared to the whole permitting issue that we got to deal with in Washington State. But they want to require EFSEC, so that's the Energy Facility Siting Evaluation Council. And this is the one that basically it currently has the power to override local zoning ordinances and stuff for projects of state significance. So like transmission lines or large solar and wind projects and things like that, because trying to get a transmission line in Washington State, I've seen ones like there was 7 counties, 5 cities, and 13 other agencies that all had to approve something of this nature. So, there you go, 10, 20 years to get that done. So they want to require EFSEC to comply with state and local development requirements. So then those are going to say they're trying to take away that veto power from EFSEC and say, yeah, you can evaluate stuff, but you got to make sure that each of the counties gets to have their local zoning requirements associated with it. So, that's fine and good. I'm not going to take a stand on that in particular, but boy, if you talk about trying to meet the CETA and the grid transition requirements and still say, and oh, by the way, the counties can stop you any way they want, well, where do we go from there? So keep an eye on that one for PNGC and WRECA also.
So was that the page you posted yesterday?
Yeah, right.
That was originally, by the way, just to give you a little background context, that's called FSAC. And it was proposed through Inslee, right? Well, when Inslee was trying to make sure that we got as much coal and coal plants shut down and carbon-based fuels out of the fuel mix, he realized that permitting was going to be essential for transmission and renewable projects. So he put that streamlined permitting process in place. And, hoping that was actually going to allow us to keep reliability up. Well, if they're starting to attack that, I think even Inslee would start to twitch.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Vince.
Sure. Okay.
I think we have some kind of legal discussion to minor stuff and.
So we'll close out our regular session at this point in time. It's 9:49. Why don't we get back together at 10 o'clock? So let's take a 10-minute break then.
Perfect.
Okay. See you in 10 minutes.